and welcome to video 5 of our expository graphics set. In this video we'll be talking about using guides to do two different things. We're going to control the number of rows the legend uses, and we're going to overwrite one of the aesthetics to make the points bigger. So let me show you on this example. We're going to use our same old plot. And you see here in my legend, the points have been made bigger, and I have put it at the bottom. So I used theme to put it at the bottom, and then I use guides to say that I'm going to use one row and the size is going to be 4. Now we're going to look at ways to overwrite the default scale. So for instance, if I'm looking at the diamonds data set and I want to plot carat versus price, it's going to give me a linear scale for Y, but this data maybe fits more of an exponential, so let me instead overwrite that with saying I want both the X and the Y to be on a log 10 scale. That makes my graph look more linear. And for those of you who did the COVID-19 data set, we used the scale Y log 10 for a lot of those graphs so that we could see better what was going on two different levels of that data set, because it was in fact exponential. Now let's go back to our MPG data set. And here, these are the default colors that come with the ggplot. But I could instead use a different color palette. So I can use Scale Color Brewer and use a different color palette to get different colors. So there are different palettes that you can use, and depending on what you want to do, you might want to play with those. So look at the different palettes that are available. The other thing I can do is I could scale my colors manually. So if you recall that presidential scale that I had before, so here's the presidential data set just like I had it before, but now I'm going to add a scale color manual where I'm going to use the values for if it's Republican, I'm going to put it in red. If it's Democrat, I'm going to put it in blue. And I'm going to color it by party. So I tell it here which variable to pick for the color, and then I give it the manual colors for each of those things that are in each of the values of the variable. So if I look, for instance, at presidential, you see it had a party variable that had either Republican or Democrat. So I'm telling it, pick the color by party. So I'm going to color it by this variable. But if it's Republican, you're going to make it red. If it's Democrat, you're going to make it blue. So that gives me a much better visual for that graph. Our last example here is going to use, oops, not that, wait a minute. Here we go. It's going to use random normals that I generate. So I've got a data frame that's got 10,000 X variables, 10,000 Y variables that come from random normal distributions with means of 0, standard deviation of 1. So if I just want to plot this data set with geom hex, and I'm going to use coordinate fixed, so I'm going to plot that data set with hexes. Now, if I want to library in, here's a Viridis library, which gives me a different color palette. So here's the color palette that I get, which the higher the count, the lighter the number. So that's a different color palette that you might want to play with at some point. For your exercise for this section, choose 2 different color palettes besides the default for your graph and put both in your document that you're going to submit for your homework. This will be the end of video 5. In video 6, we will talk about ways to zoom in on your graph.